Well, what a difference one guy can make. How you doing, everybody? Whew, boy, that was fun. After what has been, man, it's funny. It's like it's been a long month and a half, but it's also kind of flown by. It seems like yesterday that we were watching that Miami game on that Saturday afternoon. And then all of a sudden, our world kind of changed in more ways than we realized. Because don't forget, we didn't know the OG news that night. It was all about Julius, and then the OG was like, "Oh, OG's on the injury report. That's interesting." Like it kind of feels like yesterday, but it's also been a long road to travel here. And look, it's been an up and down time here in Knicks land, where we went from this feeling like this team can really do some things this year. Then the injury happened. Then they made the trade. Vibes were back up. Then we saw how the guys from Detroit played after the trade. Then the vibes were back down, but consistently, the one consistent part of this whole thing all the way through has been they have not let go of the rope. And they have withstood not only injuries and absences to OG Anunoby up until tonight and Julius Randle and Mitchell Robinson, but also the intermittent absence of Jalen Brunson. And the maybe not the absence as much of Isaiah Hartenstein, but Isaiah Hartenstein going through some periods of time where he was not really looking like himself. And all the while, your other pieces that you have depended on since opening night have gotten, to say they've gotten overtaxed is not even overtaxed, overextended, pushed beyond their limits. Like, it doesn't even really begin to describe what this team has been through and what has been asked of these players and their core over this last month and a half. Guys like Josh Hart and Dante DiVincenzo, and guys like Precious Achiuwa and Deuce McBride, who before this year were not necessarily going to figure in, like to be counted on for big minutes in important games, have needed to step up and play massive minutes and perform to such a level where it's like they didn't. I mean, obviously, Precious Achiuwa, he was on the team. But what they've asked of all of these guys, have they always come through? No, they haven't always come through. That's because, again, they're being asked to do way more than they should ever be asked for a team that is looking to compete for anything serious. But they have held the fort just enough to get to this point where now, going into tonight, you had played 63 games, 19 games remaining. You could see now the home stretch, and the home stretch started tonight. The home stretch started tonight with a game against not only a divisional opponent, which that matters for tie-breaking reasons, but against an opponent that if you win this game tonight, you clinch the tiebreaker, you add another loss to the ledger of a team that is trying to chase you down in the standings for playoff positioning, and you add obviously another win against an opponent that you should beat. Whereas you got some games coming up here where it's like, look, I'm not going to sit here and be like the Knicks have the hardest schedule in the league down the stretch of the season, but this is going to be, they're going to need to play good ball. And if they play the way they did tonight, they're going to be just fine. Because the team that you saw tonight, that is a complete basketball team. Is it like they're still not whole? But it's weird. I'm going to start this thing out by trying to calm the excitement, because this team does still need back Julius Randle. And I get that they had an incredible performance tonight. They had stretches tonight where their offense looked awesome. The offensive rating for their starting five, we said it at one point when we were doing shout out to our everybody who joined us for the playback watch along. We said it at one point during this game. It was some like laughably obscene number. Like it was great, but that's their starting five. And yes, you got Precious now as your new sixth man. Boy, we're going to talk about him because did he have a game tonight? So many guys had a game tonight, but you're. I don't know what you need Julius for the most. Do you need him like back in your starting five, or do you need him because with him back, it adds just another guy who could give you 35 to 40 minutes of really high quality basketball, and it adds that much more depth because depth, sadly, is still an issue for this team, even with OG Anunoby back. We'll talk about that in a bit. And look, at the end of the day, he scored 160 points, 106 points, not 160 points, 106 points, which was enough for a 27-point win tonight because the Knicks are playing a caliber of defense that the league has not seen in quite some time. Third straight game holding an opponent under 80 points. Yes, the 76ers had a bit to do with that, but like they had Tyrese Maxey back tonight. It didn't matter. They scored the same number of points tonight as they did on Sunday, and that was with Maxey back. So what this team is capable of doing on defense, I'll say this. You need Julius back, yes. Your ceiling is capped without Julius back, yes. What they're going to be able to do defensively with the group that they have now, where it looks like your new starting five is going to be Isaiah Hartenstein, OG Anunoby, Josh Hart, Dante DiVincenzo, and Jalen Brunson. And yeah, Brunson is always going to be a weak spot, but boy, does he try his little ass off. If you throw out a starting five where Dante DiVincenzo is your second worst defender, I think you saw what that sort of unit is capable of doing tonight. They were everywhere. And for as much as we could sit here and we could shout out a lot of individual players, the collective defensive effort tonight, again, to be in their jerseys in if you were wearing a Philadelphia uniform tonight, boy, were you feeling it by the end. I mean, just whew, that was special. That was a special defensive performance again against like they had Tyrese Maxey, they had Tobias Harris, they had Kelly Oubre, like they had some guys, they had Kyle Lowry who still is able to do things occasionally. You know, Batum coming off the bench, like this is a team full of NBA players. They had an NBA All-Star. They had a guy who's whatever you think about Tobias Harris, that guy could do some things. Scored 2 points tonight, 2. So special defensive effort. And then as your sixth man off the bench, Precious, like that's your first dude off the bench who is a multi-positional, versatile defender as well. So really solid six-man defensive core right now. That's great. I'm sure we'll talk a lot about the individual efforts because there were some very special individual efforts tonight. We have to lead with Josh Hart. For as much as this game is about OG Anunoby returning, and it should be about OG Anunoby returning because OG Anunoby puts so many pieces back into place on this team at both ends of the floor. It is scary how well he fits and everybody fits around him. But it's a Josh Hart game. And it's really been like, look, the team's going to go as far as Jalen Brunson's going to take them. There's a reason that coming into tonight, they were 7-7 in games that Brunson was there. I'm not counting the Cavs game where he exited in the first minute, and 1-3 in games that Brunson was not there. They need him. They need him desperately. He's their MVP. We talked a little bit, on the watch along tonight about how I think he has a real argument to end up fifth place on a lot of people's MVP ballots. But maybe even higher if the Knicks make a push. Who knows? But Josh Hart, I think is kind of the heart, no pun intended, is kind of the heart and soul of this team. And he's a frustrating player at times. There was a point in this game, actually not a point in this game, he finished 1 of 6 from deep, where the nearest defender is playing 15 feet off him and he has time to test the wind, line up the laces, the whole thing. And he can't consistently hit those threes. I get it. It's frustrating. what that dude gives you in so many other ways. I've run out of things to say about it. It is just quintessential Knicks basketball for anybody who was around for the 90s and obviously before my time, but for anybody who was around for the championship years. Like, that's what a New York Knick is, that dude. And he just gives it everything he has. I wish Tibbs left him out there. I can't believe I'm saying this. I wish Tibbs left him out there for one more minute. One, it would have extended the streak of 40-minute games to 10 straight. And two, he would have had a chance to get his 20th rebound, which would have made him only the second Knick in history, alongside David Lee, to have a 20-20-10 game. Still ended up with 20 points, 19 rebounds, and 10 assists. He was everywhere. His passing was on point all night. Those were not fake assists. He was absolutely dishing it. Kind of serving as a quasi point guard at times in this game, which is like a role he could serve, by the way. It's one of the many things that he does. And defensively, like, you can't say enough about Josh Hart. Josh Hart was awesome. He's been awesome for a very long time now. And all the kudos in the world to him. After that, we'll go to Anunoby. Look, the final stat line isn't anything to write, just like, okay, played 29 minutes, 14 points, 6 of 11 from the field, 1 steal. Like, not a coincidence. 29 minutes plus 28 points. And I know the whole starting five had really good plus-minus numbers. I get that. It's on offense, just having someone who a defense needs to pay attention to when he's in the corners. That alone is worth its weight in gold. But the ability to have an extra guy who could put the ball on the floor, and really make something happen, you got that too. You have the transition stuff, which we saw a few times tonight. And then, what do you say about OG Anunoby's defense? He hasn't skipped a beat. He has not skipped a beat, and he is the queen on the chessboard on that end of the floor. I was listening to Zach Lowe and Kevin Pelton talk about all defense teams earlier tonight. I didn't get through the whole pod yet. I know they talked about Hardenstein. I didn't get to that point yet. But they mentioned, like, Anunoby would be a shoo-in for all defense, but he hasn't. He's going to miss the games played limit. So, you get back one of the 2 or 3 best perimeter defenders in the league, and you're adding him to this group, which has been, I know it's been up and down defensively, but like, have a group that has a lot of, but again, it's slotting everybody else into place. When you put him at the top of the totem pole, then all of a sudden, Josh Hart doesn't have to be your best defender. All of a sudden, Precious Achiuwa doesn't have to be mirroring LeBron James's minutes, like he did in that Laker game memorably. DiVincenzo could be even more of an off-ball guy. It's good stuff. It's impressive stuff. DiVincenzo had a nice game. I mentioned Achiuwa. He was incredible tonight. Again, the stat line does not speak to how important his impact was. Only had 13 and 8, but I thought Achiuwa was perfect in what I think is now going to be his new role, which is the sixth man of this team for as long as Julius Randle is out. And we'll talk about how the rotation was the adjustment that was made tonight, which was, everybody was like, well, is Burks going to be out of the rotation? Would he ever keep Burks in and put Deuce on the bench? There's no way he takes Precious out of the rotation, right? Well, they all got minutes tonight, and it was Jericho Sims who got the unfortunate task of riding the pine. But, like, look, you get it, right? Jericho Sims been a wonderful contributor, been a big help to them. Tibbs is like, I'm going to play my 9 best guys, and I understand that seems a little ridiculous right now, given we have eyes and we have watched Alec Burks play basketball. Not far ahead of him, Bogey Bogdanovic. That's been much better. But Burks has been he's been in a special category all his own. But, like, I don't mind that he's given Burks every opportunity to try to rescue this thing, to try to resuscitate what was supposed to be a hashtag meaningful second act with the Knicks. We'll see how much longer it lasts. He didn't play great tonight. It didn't matter. Burying the lead as always. Jalen Brunson. Actually, no, sorry, I didn't mention Hardenstein. Hardenstein only had to play 20 minutes tonight. Thank God. He was great. Brunson, the team goes as Brunson goes. Ho-hum, 20 points on 12 shots, 9 assists. Didn't need to do more than he had to do. And you know what? That's great news because he's going to need to do a lot on other nights. And the fact that he didn't need to do a ton tonight, but when you needed him, he was there. And of all of the stats that I'm looking at right now, Jalen Brunson, 8 attempts from deep, 4 makes. Am I going to attribute that to Anunoby? It's all of it is a trickle down effect, because if you as a defense know that you're not going to be able to collapse on the drive, well, then all of a sudden you have to play Brunson a little bit differently all the way out to the beginning of the possession when he's on the perimeter. And that ultimately is going to lead to better looks from him. Not the quality of looks he's going to have, if and when Julius Randle comes back. I shouldn't say if and when. He'll be back. We'll see if he could stay on the floor, but he'll be back. But it was good. Okay. Man, what a big win. Big game. Just such an important freaking game for this team to come out there and put your foot down and really not let up. Like, I know they had a little bit of a thing there in the third quarter. Lee got down to 10. Tibbs called the timeout. And I thought the two biggest shots of the game, back-to-back, it got down to 61-31 after they had committed 3 turnovers in the opening 3 minutes of the third quarter. DiVincenzo 3, Brunson 3. Boom. Back to a 16-point game. I think the Sixers hit a 3 on the other end, but then it was another 3 on the next possession. I want to say it was either DiVincenzo or Brunson. I have a feeling it was Brunson. That was the game right there. And then they coasted from there on in. Okay. That's enough for me. I don't really have anything else. Andrew, I don't know if you want to pop up here before we get started with the Super Chats. But I'm ready to go. Yeah, hey.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
What's up?
I just wanted to see if you wanted to pop up here and say hi.
Oh, that's generous. Thank you, John. And aren't the vibes just great when OG Anunoby is on our team? And I just want to express this sentiment before we get to the Super Chats, because it's been a rough 2 months for everybody. And I think we need to keep the big picture, right? Like, let's not overreact tonight. But hey, John, at least we have our pick. Love you, Joe.